Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. I'm feeling nice and rested so we can continue with our Missing series, where today we're going to look at the Tomb Kings, mainly because during the weekend I've been painting up Shatti, and despite the fact that the arms barely keep glued to the body, they're still quite fun, and I've been thinking about the Tomb Kings lately. This is because the Tomb Kings themselves have possibly, well, not even possibly, just definitely the best DLC that's ever been released for the Total War series. Coming out with their own campaign, 4 different legendary lords, one of them being one of those hybrid factions that we've been wanting, not so much full, but enough to keep us going, and a almost complete roster. Creative Assembly one-upped themselves as soon as they released that DLC, and they set a new standard, so if you don't have it yet, I would recommend getting it because it's just that good, but obviously there is some stuff that's still missing, some legendary characters, some units, and it's cool to discuss, so let's not waste any more time and jump right in. So we're going to start off with the generic Lord and Hero section, and really there's only one thing that's missing, which is that of the High Lich Priest. This, of course, is your Lord Spellcaster, who should have access, well, there should be 3 variants, that of the Law of Death, the Law of Light, and the Law of Nehekara. It's weird that we didn't get that with the DLC, because the DLC was that good, and it's always kind of important. See, the High Lich Priest is usually the Hierophant, same as the normal Lich Priest can be done too. On the tabletop, you needed a Hierophant. You could not field an army without one, as without one, then the army starts to crumble. It's a weird thing, and obviously that would not work in Total War. We should never see that rule being implemented here, because, yeah. But Spellcaster Lords are always kind of fun. A lot of people do enjoy them, and it would just be nice to have an option here with the Tomb Kings too. There's been mods to be able to bring those in, but officially would always be kind of better, wouldn't it? Obviously, in a way to keep the Tomb King more viable too, you wouldn't have access to all the mounts, just maybe a skeletal horse, and maybe at most a chariot? I don't know. I mean, it could work out quite well. It's obviously to keep the Tomb King viable too, which has access to the chariot and the War Sphinx, so maybe just the steed would be okay. Having an option always works, and really just fielding a High Lich Priest was the go-to for an army on the tabletop, mainly because spellcasting is great, so I'd imagine people want to do that here too. So we are missing one generic hero, which is that of the Tomb Herald. Now, heralds are not like, say, the Tomb Prince, but rather focused on buffing, but also protection. The fact is that these were your buffers. These are the ones that you'd use with a magical banner on the tabletop and so on, and it should be done in such a way that's interpreted as much here. Obviously we have the Necrotech, which focuses on different constructs and so on, so a Tomb Herald could be focused around, say for example, your riders, your Tomb Guard, your infantry, your cavalry, anything which has an actual skeleton and is not a massive construct. Heralds were popular on the tabletop because you could have one with a nice big weapon and so on. The Prince was more dedicated to damage, the Herald was dedicated to buffing. Everything kind of had its use. In fact, the Tomb King army was great if you just removed one minor rule, which made them the worst army on the tabletop. Like, it's just an issue that Games Workshop had, but let's not talk about tabletop too much. It's more about the fact that it's just a cool factor. They could make it quite interesting, more like on the line on how the Packmaster works in a sense, but obviously for the infantry stuff, I just think that it'd be kind of cool. I mean, this could literally be just like an FLC or something, but I doubt that any Skull for the Skull Thrones events is going to be anything barring corn stuff at this point. Because, well, you know, they've got to keep on theme, right? Now we can start moving on to missing units, and we're going to start off with one which technically is in-game already. I'm talking about the Tomb Swarms, as they're more or less a army ability, which is a shame, and I get it, they didn't really know how to work with swarms, but you would have thought that they would have at least tried, considering, of course, that now we have Nurglings, an actual swarm unit. Tomb Swarms were an unbreakable swarm which was there to hold down enemies in place. That was the best thing about them. They could also hide beneath the sands, and they had poison attacks. They were actually one of the better swarm units available in the whole Warhammer Fantasy series. Very annoying to paint because, well, swarm units, but they were kind of staple, and you usually see a tabletop player bring at least a unit of them because, well, it's always good to hold something down. You could also use them as war machine hunters. The fact is that they had a decent amount of wounds. The weapon strength was fairly decent, though small strength. This was there just to be able to hold down enemies, and you'd use them exactly the same way in Total War Warhammer. Hold down an enemy with it, and then cast a vortex on top. Sacrifice the swarm, but do a lot of damage to something else. Or maybe just buff them up some way, I don't know, because obviously we know that Nurglings are going to feature heavily, so there must be a way to make swarms a little better. I mean, I hope so, because obviously giant rats for the Skaven and so on, but they're a fun unit, and it's a shame that we haven't seen them, but we might in the future, as they are missing stuff to justify a DLC. This is something I really want. It's just a unit variant, but it's how I use them. I'm talking about the Upshati, and this is the thing. In Total War, you've got them with additional hand weapons and with a great bow, but the more common one to see was with a great weapon. That was actually the standard version, and it's just a shame that they're not here. It's not because these are the ones that I've been painting recently, but the fact is that they were the more common, and they did a lot of damage with the great weapons too. This was at strength 6, and yeah, they were just kind of cool. Anti-large variant too. I know a lot of people don't want the same type of unit over and over, but weapon variants are just weapon variants, and I just like it. You know, the more we can have, the better. At the end of the day, you can tailor your armies to how you wish. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. And yeah, I mean, it's cool. You know, Upshati are awesome. Okay, so now we get to talk about something quite special. This is the Kemrick Titan, which never had an official miniature. Keep this in mind. Anything that you do see online and so on is a kit bash. Mind you, there are some really impressive kit bashes out there, but essentially this was a Titan level type of unit back in the day. You had rules for them in the Monstrous Arcanum, I believe, or Storm of Magic. One of the two. It's very, very rare. The thing is, Games Workshop had this really nasty habit of introducing units and stuff, but never releasing miniatures, and it was always, oh, it'll come out eventually, but yeah, never happened. This would be on par with, say, for example, that of the Lizardmen Dreadsaurian. It would have been on the same line. It would have been a Forge World unit. It's absolutely massive. It had a lot of wounds. It did a lot of damage. It was there to be a giant tank in a sense. It could just go in, do its damage, and reflect a lot of damage back, because obviously its shell and so on would be very heavily armored. It would have been a very impressive thing to see, and this is why I think that we're eventually going to get something as a DLC for the Tomb Kings, as this is something that would get a lot of people to buy something. I mean, imagine a giant beetle construct just smashing its way through a wall. And come on, like, the artwork looks cool. I attempted to build one myself, but impossible, especially when trying to get the sheer scope and scale of this type of thing. But just imagine a giant beetle fighting an exalted bloodthirster of Khorne or something. I mean, that would just be super cool. Next, we're looking towards something relatively old. The thing is that way back in the day, the Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings distinction did not exist. It was just undead. So this is something called a Bone Thrower, which was used by both, essentially, but it doesn't really fit with the Vampire Counts because the Vampire Counts don't use artillery. Their lore doesn't allow them to use artillery or range or anything. That's why they're so heavily dependent on magic, hordes, swarms, and so on. So it would work really well with the Tomb Kings, though, you know, the Giant already has access to a bow, which acts the same. I imagine that this would just be better accuracy, or just be able to do a lot more damage. It really much depends. I like the idea. I wouldn't say it's desperately needed, but if they want to bring in something which is just cool factor, I mean, these would be nice. Mummies were technically a thing way back in the day too. I'm just mentioning them very briefly here, as I really don't think that they fit with the Tomb King aesthetic now. I mean, if I recall correctly, mummies were, what, from 2nd or 3rd edition? Something like that, and they've been out of the lore for a long, long time. Nowadays we have mummies, but it's the whole Tomb King aesthetic, so it's very, very, very different. I don't think they'd be able to work. I don't know, maybe Creative Assembly could think of something, but I'm just mentioning them here as just for a completionist thing. Lastly, we can talk about the Baste. I'm definitely mispronouncing that. So these are supposed to be cats, because, you know, Tomb Kings are the Warhammer Fantasy version of Egyptians, which obviously liked cats too. I don't know how this could work. I believe that they're a style of item now. I'm not too sure, and apparently they had a miniature way back in the day, but I'm not too sure where this is from because I've never really seen one. What we do know from lore is that there's a standard one and then a greater one, and what could be done here is that maybe they could bring in the greater one instead of the standard one, more like the Saber Cats now of Kislev, might be kind of cool. Having the same style on the battlefield, which we can imagine is a fast unit, which will be able to hunt down any stragglers, any war machines, and so on, and also be decent in anti-infantry. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not too sure how this could work, but this is more or less what I see when I look at this model and I look at the lore. Though with all that being said, now we can start looking towards legendary characters. There's not a lot of them, however, there are a few really cool ones. The first being Prince Apophis, the Scarab Lord. This one, I mean, look at it, it looks absolutely awesome. We've already seen it implemented in a mod, but it would be cool to see it officially because better animations and so on. In lore, he's an assassin. Yeah, I know, it doesn't look like it, but basically he was able to hunt down any targets and so on. He is sworn to his chosen god, eventually ends up being binded to Nagash in a sense, because Nagash eats the death god, and it's just a weird thing in the end times, so let's not get too much into that. Although I always did think that if he does get introduced, it's going to be around the time of Nagash, because it kind of makes sense. Though, as a generic legendary hero, that would be kind of cool. Say you capture Numas as he was trying to take over that area, and then you get a quest chain with any of the Tomb Kings. That could be kind of fun. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I just want him because cool factor, and as always, cool factor is the biggest thing for me with these lists. Though I imagine that he would be incredibly hard to animate because that's all scarabs and so on. I wonder how they would go about that. So this next character is a hero in the army book, but could be done in an interesting way. So this is Ramitep the Visionary, the Necrotech of Qatar. So he's a Necrotech, but a bit stronger than all the others. He has a special rule called Master Artisan, which made a unit of constructs a little stronger by allowing them to reroll their armor saves. Back then on the tabletop, that's pretty good. But the idea of the character is he is quite the builder. He's known for his building, he's known for all these wondrous things from the lands of the Tomb Kings, which could be done in a certain way. I'm thinking maybe he could be a legendary lord instead, have a Necrotech Lord character also introduced in a very similar way to any specialized ones that we've seen for the Skaven and so on, you see with all the different types of clans. So a playable start in Qatar, a new Lord character, and a hyper focus on constructs, construct heavy armies, which, yeah, is kind of how it goes with your Tomb King armies by the time that you get to a certain point, but this would be even more so. You'd even unlock them a little earlier and so on. It would be kind of cool, as the Tomb Kings could do with one more legendary lord. I mean, they need a few things, so a DLC would work out quite well. This one's the one that strikes out the most to me. Plus, it would just be kind of nice as that would change a few things up. I mean, the perfect way about this is we know that Warhammer 3 is getting all these new map changes, especially for the different races and factions. So, for the Tomb Kings, what better way to introduce these changes than, say, for example, Ramitep, who designed most of the well-known monoliths. Kinda cool, you know, like a whole redesign of the Tomb King territories? I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about it, but it would be kind of cool and, you know, cool factor. Next we have the Heralding Cuff, the emissary of Settra. So this is a character who was always around Settra. He was his personal standard bearer, similar to that of, say, Ludwig with Karl Franz. It's a character that was always around Settra. He was even known as Settra's champion. That was his special rule, which made him go to the forefront of the battle, always getting into duels known as challenges, and even gave him bonuses for that too. The character even conveyed fear tests to anything that was around him. He was just built to do as much damage as possible, and it would be kind of nice to see a legendary hero for Settra, make him a bit more special. If any legendary lord from the Tomb Kings deserves a dedicated legendary hero, it would definitely be Settra, with any others being like capturable or recruitable by anyone else. But this would be just like fun. He's a cool character. He never had a model, I believe. A lot of people just kit bashed him. We spoke about this before with Games Workshop doing this often, but yeah. And I'm coming in with an edit here. Remember when I said that there should only be one legendary hero for Settra and then none for others? Well, there is a specific character from Qatar that could also work with Ramitep as a legendary hero. This is Sehenismet. I am definitely mispronouncing this, mainly because this was from 6th edition, and I didn't see a lot of Tomb King players with that. So, yeah, he is a legendary hero giant, well, bone giant, and he's pretty cool. He had his own style. A lot of people kit bashed him, I believe. But the character itself is known to be a massive bone giant, yet still a necrotect in a sense, able to wake up and rouse any of the sleeping constructs in an effort to bring more reinforcements to the field. I don't know how he could be done, but legendary heroes are something that we need again, and this could work out quite well. Now, with all that being said, there's a few things to discuss. Yes, I'm no longer talking about any more characters, and yes, I know that some people are going to be asking about a specific Tomb King character, yet he's going to be discussed in the future when it comes to a Vampire Coast video, because he fits with that, let's just be honest. Unless we get naval battles, which at this point I really don't think we're ever going to get. So I think that the other character could fit quite well as a Vampire Coast thing. We'll talk about him soon enough. I've got a few videos planned out and I'm getting them done slowly but surely. With all that being said, I'd say that the Tomb Kings are in a very, very good spot. They have aged incredibly well. We've had them for quite some time now, and it still feels fresh. It doesn't feel like some of the factions are getting better than others, and there's no real feel of the Tomb Kings slowing down in a sense. They still feel very fresh. And that's a good thing. I wouldn't say that they need a rework. I mean, they could do with some quality of life changes more than anything. Like, say, for example, being able to confederate would be nice. Like, Cetra would definitely be able to take over, say, Ramitep or obviously Khalida. I don't know how it would work with Arkan and so on, so maybe just some factions being able to confederate with others. Obviously nobody being able to confederate with Cetra because Cetra doesn't serve. But really, this is why this DLC was so good, and they've been able to mirror it with like the Vampire Coast and so on. We haven't seen any new faction DLC since then, but it's been a new standard and I think it's okay. The only thing I would really ask for is more distinction for Arkan's faction. Make him a proper hybrid because, I mean, it just kind of makes sense. If they already brought it into that standard, it's already in story, he's trying to resurrect Nagash and so on, but he has access to just a few of the vampire counts. It would be cool if, say, he had a proper Legions of Nagash feel, so a mixture of both. It doesn't have to be both full factions, because that would be kind of overpowered. I mean, it's still doable, because it's just like, you know, it's player standard. I mean, half and half works well too, but I feel like more undead would be great. More vampire count units would be great. I don't know, we're gonna have to wait and see. There's some really cool mods that do this interpretation really, really well, but Creative Assembly have not been too keen, I think, with these types of things. I mean, let's be honest, for a lot of factions that we do have already playable, there's a few of them that should be hybrids and they're just not. I really hope that Warhammer 3 changes that, because it would just be kind of fun and it would give more replayability. Say, for example, if Arkan got a dedicated rework to make him more of a hybrid thing, maybe a lot more people would be interested in replaying him, as at this point, the only thing that's there, you don't really get to use those units for long, the basic vampire stuff, so it's like, you're just playing a standard Tomb King. I don't know, but it would be cool. I wish that maybe we had like this dedicated patch just to rework some stuff with other stuff. I don't know how that would work, but we're going to have to wait and see. If you guys have any ideas, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll be back again soon with another video. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.